Hi, I'm Bob Hull. This is 1066, or the original Hastings pudding. It's from a book called Motorcycle Summer and Other Stories, published earlier this year, 2020. Many years ago, in a small province of France, a band of noble ruffians from Norway landed at a raiding party. When the dust of raging battle had settled, the leader of the party leader, proclaimed himself Duke, and moved into the castle that was left standing. In those days, this was known as a shrewd real estate deal. The poor king of France, one of the interminable number of Louis, could do nothing but go along with the idea, but he struck a bargain, which the raiding Robert, for that was the name of the party leader, thought was a good idea at the time. The deal was, Louis will deign to recognize Robert as the new owner of the piece of real estate if Robert won't take over the rest of France. Robert, however, would have to perform an act of fealty to his new king that seemed distasteful. Robert would have to kiss the king's foot. Well, Robert said he would and ordered his men to bring the king's foot to him. Since the king was rather attached to his foot, Robert's men decided it would be all right to bring the whole king, and so they did. Robert saw the logic of not harming his new lord too much, but refused to bend over to any man, especially to kiss a foot. So Robert was left with only one option: pick up the foot. This would have been fine if Robert had not been over 6 feet tall and Louis under 6 feet tall. After they picked the king up off the ground and stopped him from declaring war on his new vassal, after pointing out that the only reason Robert wasn't king himself was that he didn't particularly want to be, things settled down to several generations of the usual stormy times with the usual measly border clashes. Robert's grandson William, however, got a bit uppity. He decided he did want to be a king. He felt, however, that his granddad had picked the wrong country to settle in. William was an Anglophile. He really liked England. He even had picture postcards up all over his castle walls and would sit and ruminate and plot, mostly plot, over what he would do in England. At this same time, King Harold, one of those Scandinavian countries no one ever can keep straight, we'll call them Danes, decided he too would like to vacation in England. It's too cold in Scandinavia, and while he was at it, he might as well take over the place. William and Harold should have talked. That is all there is to it. Both of them managed to plan their vacations at the same time. Harold landed a few days ahead of William. Oh, lucky William. And so the King of England, also a Harold, some people just don't know what to name their kids, and was away in the north greeting Harold, the Dane, and his Great Danes, a war band. When William landed in the south, William was ticked off at not being accorded the usual greeting due someone of his rank corps, so decided it was time for a little unnecessary mayhem. By this time, Harold of England had met Harold the Dane and explained the situation. Harold the Dane didn't like it one bit, so Harold of England deported him. Harold the Dane had a very pleasant trip back to Denmark, but complained of it being too dark inside the coffin. He was buried in great celebration. Meanwhile, Harold of England took his greeting party with balloons and all on a forced march southward to meet William, Harold having regretted his lack of attention to his second illustrious guest. William and Harold met near a little town called Hastings and tried to work things out. Harold pointed out that he had, after all, been faced with 2 guests at the same time, but did get south as soon as he could. William pointed out that he was tired from his long journey when he arrived, and it was too late for excuses. Harold mentioned that he had brought his own housecarls, a kind of important official greeter, armed to the teeth. William said, so what? And he didn't like Harold's attitude. From there, things started going downhill, actually uphill, and the things were William's troops. William surrounded poor King Harold. William's family keeps running into poor kings, and managed to knock down Harold and his housecarls, another warband, enough times that they didn't get up again, ever. What was William to do? He went on up to London and had himself crowned king. William even managed to publish a book, the Domesday Book, and had a very nice tapestry, period equivalent of a television miniseries, done up to tell the whole story of his little vacation. The peasants rebelled from time to time, but the king didn't understand what they were talking about since he had managed to leave his French-English dictionary in his other suit, and so put them down furiously. After a while, rebellion stopped, and things got back to a relatively normal state, at least for England in those days. And everyone lived happily ever after, sort of. Thanks for listening.